Hello and welcome to May's edition of Garden Advice here at the Old Railway Line Garden Centre. I'm joined again with Keith here and we're out in the shrub area today. So we're going to start, Keith, by talking about what people can be doing now in May with the flowers in their garden.
Well, a great month, May. It's one of my favourites. Everything's growing well, it just wants to grow. But always lots of things to do. I said that in April, I'd probably say every month actually. So first thing this month really, planting things. This is a great month for planting. The soil's warming up nicely, there's still plenty of moisture in it. So plant all sorts of things, trees, shrubs, herbaceous perennials, climbers, alpines, and of course fruit veg plants. So get planting, good watering in when you do it, and then water them through the rest of the year to keep them going. That's the first thing I think. Your established plants, they're all growing strongly, so herbaceous perennials, mine are shooting up. You can see the growth almost every day, and I think it's always better to get the supports in early rather than struggling later on when they're far too large. So the old method of string and canes, but there's a lot more attractive supports these days.
Yeah, I can see you've brought a few with us here to show us.
Yeah, so the dome or the cone or the rings or these bent bamboo, they're very useful. So it's a good time to start thinking about which perennials need those supports and getting them in early. And within a few weeks, the growth will have covered them and you won't see them again through the rest of the season. Wall shrubs, climbers, they're growing strongly as well, and they need tying in just to get the growth where you want it and keep them tidy. The spring bulbs, they've been fantastic. They were all a bit late, but when they came together. I mean, our daffodils have been the best I've ever seen them really, but they are beginning to finish now, and we'll need deadheading, feeding. Don't cut the foliage down yet, leave that on until it starts dying down naturally, probably at the end of the month or into June. Primroses, they've been really good, and polyanthus, but you might be thinking about wanting to divide clumps that have got a bit too big. They can be done now, put in a shady part of the garden, kept well watered, and maybe you've had primroses in pots and troughs. They can perhaps be coming out now and go into the garden ready for next year, so that those pots and troughs are ready for the bedding plants, which can go out towards the end of the month, but not yet, of course.
Well, that's a great bit of advice on what people can be doing now with the flowers. We're going to next go on to talk about sort of kitchen planting and what people can be doing with them.
Can I mention sweet peas before we do?
Yeah, go ahead.
Time to plant sweet peas, just done mine. They need a really fertile soil, so give them a good soil, a good feed, perhaps once every fortnight just to keep them going. But you've got to grow sweet peas, haven't you? Fantastic plant.
So we're now here in our Grow Your Own section here at the Old Railway Line Garden Centre, and Keith's going to give us a bit of advice what people should be doing for planting for the kitchen garden now.
Well, it's a good time to sow. I suppose we've been waiting for the soil to be warm enough, and it now is. So you can be sowing most things, lettuce, sprouts, cabbages, cauliflowers, leeks, broccoli. Or if you prefer it, if you don't need a lot of plants, then these 6-packs or 8-packs are ideal. I grow most of my veg in 12-inch pots, and I put 1 pack of these in a 12-inch pot, and it lasts us with lettuce and things like that for weeks and weeks. So convenient way of growing things, and you can see plenty of different varieties here. The secret with veg is to keep them watered. If they start drying out, then they're more likely to go to seed, and they just don't taste as good. So keep the watering up, and it looks as though we're into a dry spell. I thought we'd never have one, but I think it started, so it's important to keep your eye on it. It's also a time where you can start sowing things like coriander and basil, parsley, the more delicate herbs. They can be sown now inside on a windowsill or in a greenhouse for fresh herbs. Strawberries, they're going to start coming. The early strawberries will start coming on fairly soon with a bit more sun like this. Of course, the birds want those just as much as you do, so it might be worth thinking about protecting strawberry plants. And if you grow a lot of fruit, then a fruit cage may be something you could think about. There's lots of ready-built ones now you can use. The old method, of course, is just some verticals and some netting off the roll, which we do in platform 1. But it always seems you put all that hard work into growing your fruit, and half of it goes to goes to the bird population. Of course, you like feeding birds, you may be happy with that, but it's worth thinking about. So it's a busy time in the veg pot at the moment, but it's a good time because things are growing away nicely, and you've got this the promise of all the produce in later months. It's early yet for tender things. End of the month perhaps for putting out outdoor tomatoes and courgettes. They need a little bit more protection, but most of these are hardy now and can go out into the garden straight away.
That's great. So we're now going to move on and talk about those sort of tender stuff that you might have in the greenhouse. So we'll talk about what people can be doing now in their greenhouse,
Yep.
and what they should have ready in there. So Keith's now brought us over to one of our walking greenhouses here at the garden centre, where you're going to give us a bit of advice of what people can be doing now in the greenhouse.
Well, greenhouse, it's ironic. We've spent all year trying to warm the greenhouse up, and now we're into the time of the year where we're trying to cool it down. So ventilation's the key. Opening up first thing in the morning, unless it's very chilly, and then closing up late afternoon, keep that heat in. But ventilation's really important at the moment. It can get very hot in the greenhouse. It was over 29 degrees last week in one afternoon in mine, and that's a bit too warm, really.
So you've given me this product here, this cool glass greenhouse shading. So what benefits has this product got for people's greenhouses?
Well, a lot of greenhouses, I mean, they're sited in a sunny spot. That's the best place for them, but they do get too hot, so you do need to start shading from this month onwards. It's not so bad if you've got this sort of greenhouse, because that's got built-in shading into it. But a glass greenhouse gets very hot, so you simply paint that on. It's diluted in water and painted on, and it reduces the temperature. And then at the end of the year, you wipe it off. There are easier ways, perhaps better looking ways. You can buy a shading off the roll and either fit it to the inside of the greenhouse or the outside. It's a bit more flexible because you can roll it up if it's on a cloudy day and cover it on a sunny day. But ventilation is the key. Of course, as is watering. You're going to have to water much more in greenhouses now. It's been sparing over the winter, but when things are growing strongly, they'll need watering every day, maybe twice a day. So watering, again, important. Most people, we haven't because this is a demonstration one, but a lot of people have seedlings now ready for pricking out or cuttings. It's important to move them on. They need to be put into bigger pots, keep them growing strongly before they actually go out into their growing positions. So there's always plenty to do there as well.
So that's everything. Anything else people should be having in their greenhouses at the moment?
Well, I just started, I've got quite a lot of indoor veg inside at the moment, which will come out in the next few weeks. But most people, of course, will have bedding plants in there that they've been protecting for the last few weeks. Perhaps they're hanging baskets that they've already planted up, but haven't been able to put them out yet. They need to come out really during the day if possible, just to harden off and back into the greenhouse at night, unless the night's really mild and they can be left out. But it's, for the next fortnight, it's a bit of a chore, that in and out of the greenhouse, just making sure things are ready to go out towards the end of the month.
So middle to the end of the month is when people should start thinking about putting these bedding plants and hanging baskets and that sort of thing out.
People will know, the time of the last frost that they're likely to get. And obviously in cold districts, you've got to hang on a little bit longer, but from the middle of the month and in warmer places, you can start thinking about your bedding plants and things like outdoor tomatoes. But later on in the month in colder districts.
Right, so that's brilliant. We're going to go on now to talk about what people can be doing with their lawns now in May. So everyone's had, weather-wise, a pretty poor April. It's been pretty cold, and so I don't expect most people have had a chance to get out and do bits to the lawn that they actually wanted to do. So can they still do the bits that they were planning to do in April now in May?
Oh yes, yeah. These combined weed, feed and moss killers can be used throughout the summer really, starting in April. So yes, no problem about doing that, and well worth doing. Grass needs building up at this time of year. It's had a hard winter, as we all have, and they're really useful things, very easy to put on, and well worth it. If you've got a particular weed problem, then you can use things like Verdone, which will kill weeds in lawns, but not the grass, and that can be applied again. It's either this is a ready mixed, or you can mix your own and water it in. But well worth getting on top of the weeds at this time of year, otherwise they can really ruin a lawn. Main thing with the lawn, of course, at the moment is it's growing well at last. Of course, then it needs cutting, so at least once a week, twice a week if you want a good turf. If you have put a weed killer on the lawn, don't use the cuttings as a mulch, because that chemical is in the grass, but cuttings can go onto the compost heap because they break down over several months and they'll be fine. But with grass cuttings, of course, what you don't want is just layer upon layer of grass cuttings in your compost. It all needs to be mixed together and kept moist, and then it will break down much more quickly. And if you have problems with composting, you can put activators in, like Garotta or chicken pellets, or I actually collect horse manure off the lane outside if I can get it, and just put it into the compost bin, and it just gets the bacteria going and everything breaks down much more quickly.
That's brilliant. So for people now who've got sort of bulb patches or are looking to start a new lawn, is now the time to start thinking about laying some grass seed down or laying a bit of turf down?
Well, ideally April is the month for that, but it has been difficult this year. So yes, you can still do that, either sowing seeds or laying turf. But the secret in May and as you get towards June is keeping that new grass well watered. Once you've gone to the bother of doing that and it's growing, you've got to keep it growing by keeping it moist at all times.
That's great. So have you got any more sort of last general bit of advice for anyone now?
Well, May traditionally has been the month where you sort out ponds. The water's warm enough for you to be able to do that, because before then it's been far too cold to get into the pond really. So you're thinning out some perhaps weeds that have grown too much, adding new plants, making sure you've got plenty of oxygenating plants, that's important, and just generally having a good clean out. Maybe introducing new fish. We will certainly need to start feeding your fish more, and perhaps even change to a more protein food as the water warms up and they begin to feed more. So yeah, there's plenty to do with ponds. They're not easy, but they give you a lot of joy in a garden, and this is the time really to get started again. Some people, of course, take their pumps out and filters for the winter, and if that's the case, this is the time to get them back working, make sure they are working, and then it keeps the water clearer, and of course it's much better for your fish if you've got them.
Well, it's given everyone now a good insight on what they should be doing in May. So thanks very much, Keith, for all that advice.
Don't forget problems though. There's always problems. We've got to look out for those, haven't we? So slugs, if we get some warm, damp nights, we're going to, the slug is going to rear its ugly head again. I'm going to try this year. It's new to me. It's not a new product on the market, but it's I don't really like using too many chemicals. And this is a wool product that forms a barrier around plants, and the slugs and snails won't cross it. It also acts as a mulch, keeps the moisture in, and eventually decomposes into the soil and adds nutrients to the soil. So I'm certainly going to try that this year and see how it goes. The other pests, I suppose, at this time of year, viburnum beetle and lily beetle, they've been a problem the last few years, and they can really make a mess of your plants if you don't spot them early. The lily beetle's bright red, so that's fairly easy, but you need to be looking out for its larvae at the moment, which is not as easy to spot. But if you've got lilies, if you've got viburnums, just keep an eye open for any pests and diseases and deal with them as you see them. And then the aphid, of course, May, the aphid population just blossoms in May, and you always hope the blue tits are going to solve that for you, but they don't always. So if you get an infestation of aphid, you really need to do something about it, either the old finger and thumb method or a soap-based deterrent or a stronger chemical. And if they're on roses, you might as well give the rose that 3-in-1 feed, well, not feed, but the herbicide and treatment for black spot and mildew. You're going to spray once, you might as well spray for the whole thing. So it's a great month, but there's always problems on the horizon you've got to keep on top of. But that's gardening.
That's great. That's great. So the main things this month to watch out for is your pests that are going to start appearing. To check the watering of anything you've got coming along.
Yeah, particularly if you've just planted things, you need to make sure they don't dry out.
Then of course now start concentrating on the more sort of tender items like the bedding and the veg.
And there's those to come towards the end of the month, and then into June you get the benefit of those. But don't be too anxious to get them out. Watch the weather.
That's great. Thank you very much, Keith.
Okay.
And we'll be doing another one next month, so tune back in. If you've, in the meantime, got any questions that you'd like answering, post a comment below the video and we'll do our best to answer them for you.